Hello. It's been a while, guys. It's been, I think, at least 3 weeks, maybe even a month. Let me open the comments up right here so I can see them. All right. I've just been busy, been traveling. I'm a little sick. I got back from vacation the day before yesterday, and I caught, like, all of us got sick. So if I have a cough attack, it's just what it is. And I mean, I was really surprised to see how many of you guys missed these. Like, I got so many messages like, what happened to the Twitch streams? What happened to the Twitch streams? And I was like, oh my gosh, because I really like doing them. And so it was nice to see that you guys like it as well. Yeah, ignore my nails. I had a very wild time on vacation, which is very not the norm for me. And I had a couple injuries. But you guys missed me. I miss you too. I do enjoy doing these, and I do want to move and do a lot of YouTube stuff, but YouTube is very different from this. And I've only done like 2 YouTube videos, and I'm like, I enjoy doing YouTube videos, but I like this better. I like interactive. I like to be able to respond to comments, to bounce off comments, to debate, to clap back at all the people angry at me for existing. Like, I like it. Okay. So, oh my gosh, I missed you guys too. And I was overwhelmed. I got messages on Twitter. I got messages on Instagram. I got messages on OnlyFans. I got messages on Snap. Like, people were afraid that I was never going to do them again. So they're back every Monday, except next Monday. I am doing, I'll be gone next Monday. And then there's maybe one other Monday where my moderator will be gone. But besides that, every Monday at outfit reveal, it's just a tank top. This is not the place for outfit reveals. Every Monday, 6:30 Pacific. So today the topic is hate speech. I think I don't remember for sure, but I think the last one or one of the last ones I did was on obscenity and free speech. And I feel like free speech is just a really hot topic right now, and everybody's talking about it with Elon taking over Twitter. This stuff with this resurgence of anti-Semitism and Nazis and all of that has really kind of brought this back into the forefront. So I wanted to talk about 2 things. Sorry, the comments distract me, but I want them there because that's why I like to stream like this. Do you watch the Soccer World Cup? No, I'm not a sports fan by any means, so I don't watch any of it. Yep, go to my YouTube if you guys haven't. I've already dropped the story on my whole story on lawyer to, oh my God, I hate not having nails, but my story from lawyer to OnlyFans star. Also my YouTube, I had this guy that was working with my friend, like, edit and like put up, and I hate it. It's like so cringy. So I'm not working with him anymore, and I hope that I can like work with somebody who can make like the banner and everything is so, and I understand like 90% of what I have to put out on the internet is cringy just because of the nature of what it is, but that was just over the top, I think. Anyways, but yeah, I dropped that story time, and I dropped a story time on how my parents found out about you have a very sexy accent. I don't think I have an accent. I grew up in the Pacific Northwest. We don't have an accent over there, but maybe I just talk a specific way. But I also dropped a story time on how my parents found out about my OnlyFans. My Persian conservative parents. If you guys want to know how that happened, check out my YouTube. It's also linked everywhere, and it's linked on the link on the Twitch page, I believe. I'm not too familiar with Twitch, but anyway, so today we're talking about hate speech. So I want to talk about the actual laws surrounding hate speech, like, in that context, and then also just spark a discussion, because this is actually one I have not fully developed my whole take on content moderation when it comes to platforms, which is a completely separate topic than what is actually legal and what is protected by the First Amendment. It's separate from what is allowed on certain platforms. And so with Elon taking over, this is kind of like a big thing people are talking about. And I have my views, but I'm on this in particular, I'm very open to hearing other people's take on this. So yeah, so hate speech. I think there's a lot of misconception, and people always say I think a lot of times we keep hearing this term free speech absolutist. Like, I'm a free speech absolutist. And a lot of times when people say they're a free speech absolutist, they mean that they believe in hate speech being protected. And because nobody is really a free speech absolutist doesn't mean that you believe in revenge porn, leaking content, child, exploitation, doxing, like things that are illegal. That's usually not what people mean. Defamation, libel, like people are usually mean like you should be able to say hateful shit online. And so that's kind of what we're talking about today. Do you speak Arabic? Lizzie Baker, you are very off topic. But no, I don't speak Arabic. I'm Persian, so I speak Farsi. Are you going to play video games on Twitch? No, because I don't know how. Maybe one day I'll try to play my first video game for you guys on Twitch. Anyways, so free speech. Is Rex in here? He's like my favorite subscriber, and he always comes. So I'm waiting for him. Do you only date black men, or are you open to dating? This is not a Q&A. What are your thoughts on Biden? All right, save these questions. I'll get to questions at the end, but I just want to get through. I don't have a lot of stuff to say, actually, but just a quick, some quick education. Kind of, if you watch the obscenity stream I did, if you haven't seen it, it's going to be up on the YouTube where all this is uploaded. But we talked about obscenity and how obscenity is not protected by the First Amendment. And when we did that, we went over what are the reasons that we value freedom of speech. What are the reasons? What are the pillars of it? And we talked about how number one value is protecting democracy, marketplace of ideas, and expression. So I think for this one, it's heavily in the second category, right? The marketplace of ideas. We talked about how the court is very critical of any type of viewpoint-based discrimination or content-based discrimination, which essentially means anytime somebody, the state statute, whatever, is trying to regulate speech based on the type of speech it is, based on what it's saying. If that is the type of speech that the government, not the government, our courts, our country places strict scrutiny on, again, this is kind of a recap, but strict scrutiny basically is the highest form of scrutiny. There needs to be a very compelling government interest, and there has to be no less restrictive means of achieving that interest. And so usually this is like a general rule. When the court is applying strict scrutiny, it's very likely that the statute or whatever is being challenged is going to be struck down. And so we know that there are some categories of speech that aren't protected. We talked about obscenity, incitement of violence, which is the Brandenburg test. It has to be intended to incite violence, and violence has to be imminent. And that's a key factor there. Fighting words is not protected. That's a funny one. The main case on that is Chaplinsky, which actually the fighting words used in Chaplinsky are really funny. I think the guy called the other guy a goddamn racketeer, which I don't know if that would be considered a fighting word now, but back then we're gonna get some fists thrown. And a lot of the hate speech cases, they do try to when someone's trying to regulate hate speech, they try to really put it into one of these categories. And I have a few cases that I remember from my free speech class that kind of tie into that. Another thing that's interesting is I think in Ohio Court of Appeals just ruled that the N-word can be considered fighting word. We did talk about how the reason that the court does really differentiate between content-based discrimination like this versus when we talked about obscenity is they're well, obscene material, pornography, for instance, doesn't have social, literary, doesn't have a lot of value, right? It's not really an idea. It it doesn't help the marketplace of ideas, right? It doesn't help the marketplace of ideas to flourish if we sit there and we're just looking at, my titties. I think it does personally, but that's not what so same thing with fighting words. If something is just to incite violence and there's no actual value in what they're saying, whether you agree with it or not, whether it's egregious or not, the courts are they don't want to protect it as much. It's not as important to them to protect that kind of speech. So the N-word is an interesting one, right? Because it's not really an idea. It's just a slur. Slurs in general, you're not expressing an idea. You're not trying to convince people of a particular viewpoint. You're just yelling out a slur. So when we talk about content moderation later, I feel like that's an interesting one to discuss. What separates the U.S. and others is free speech. As far as I know, U.S. is the only place with free speech. U.S. has the broadest protection for free speech. That is for sure, compared to even other Western countries such as Europe, or Western civilization. We do have very broad protection. So we do have some limitations. We talked about obscenity, defamation, calling to violence, fighting words. There's even regulations on commercial speech. There's different but in general, especially when it comes to the marketplace of ideas, protecting democracy and protecting the marketplace of ideas, we do provide the broadest, a very broad protection for free speech. I agree with that. If they can cancel a former, hey, can my moderator yeah, perfect. I agree with that. If they can cancel a former president or billionaire, they can definitely cancel you. I read something that said, in my time, we march for rights. In this time, the youth marches against their rights. So I'm going to talk about this. I agree with you. But I think there's some nuances to it. But that's the problem, right? When people are like, let's regulate hate speech, who gets to decide what's hate speech, right? It becomes it's not something that's easily, okay, this is hate speech, this isn't hate speech, right? What was considered hate speech a long time ago may not be considered hate speech today. Depending on your views, you may consider X hate speech. These people might, it becomes a very sticky, slippery slope type of territory when we start saying we can regulate speech based on its content. So I think especially on a like on a government level, when it comes to our rights, I think that broad protection is a very good thing. And that's one of the best things I think about America for sure. Free speech people feel that their speech should be free, but want to be able to say what others should and should not say. It seems that free speech isn't as apparent as we thought. This is very true. And I try very hard, and I think I'm actually very good at, not falling into this trap. So what I used to do when I was reading Supreme Court cases in law school is I would change the facts to make it the opposite of what the facts were in order to make sure that my biases were not going to at least as much play a factor in it. So a lot of the free speech, a lot of the hate speech cases have to do with Nazis, KKK, etc. So what I would do is I would switch it and I would make that group, the group that was spewing said hate speech, into a group that I agreed with. Like I was like, okay, let's say this group was fighting for sex worker rights, etc. And when you change those facts in your head and you don't say, oh, well, fuck them, they're Nazis, you can really, you're able to look at the case in a more neutral way, because it does just feel icky. I even feel icky kind of doing this and being an advocate for allowing hate speech, because I'm like, ugh, I don't want to. But when you actually look at the principles and you stick with them and you can switch the facts, you can make it interchangeable in your head. Okay, let's say this was Black Lives Matter instead of the KKK. If that changes your opinion of the case, or if that changes, especially if it changes the outcome of the case in your head, that's when you know you have a problem and you need to fix your problem. You need to look at the principles. So that's an exercise I used to do for that reason. What about prurient interests? I never know how to say that. Prurient. I always want to say prurient, but it's prurient interests. Yeah. What he's talking about, I think he listened to my obscenity one. So yeah, obscenity is anything that appeals to it makes you horny. They're saying that doesn't have any kind of value. I think it has a lot of value, personally. And you know, these people that it's funny because the right wing in particular, they want to ban porn off Twitter, etc., because they're like, this is no value. But to me, if that doesn't have value, like the N word, because they're like, oh, you should be able to say the N word. What kind of value? How does that have more value than my titties? You know, I think that's a different slurs, just outright slurs without any kind of point to it. I think that's a different conversation from, I believe, even if what you believe is egregious, I believe that Black people are inferior. That's an idea. It's a very stupid one. I didn't listen before, but I'm a lawyer. Oh, okay. You know the obscenity doctrine, but that's what I did. I did another stream on obscenity. That's what they're talking about. I agree with the outlook you had on biases, because hate speech is only an opinion. What I think is hate speech, you wouldn't. That deals with race, religion, upbringing, everything deal with daily. Yeah, so that becomes the issue with hate speech. Hold on, I got a message from my moderator. My moderator says titties create cash flow in the market. You know what? The Supreme Court thinks money is speech with Citizens United. If money is speech, my titties are speech. And that's just a motherfucking fact. I feel like I'm a believer in free speech. There are people I don't agree with, but that doesn't mean I feel like they shouldn't say what they feel. I don't think anyone should be canceled from any platform unless violence is involved. Yeah, so I definitely want to get into what you guys think, how content moderation should look. If you guys were running, let's say, Twitter, what would you, your titties are free speech, they're speaking to me. Hey. Not wearing a bra either. But yeah, so free speech is not free speech. Hate speech is protected. That is, so people, sometimes I know people get really confused on that. People are like, oh, well, this is hate speech. You're not allowed to do hate. You are allowed. You're maybe not on a particular platform, right? There's community guidelines on every platform. But in general, in life, you are allowed to engage in hate speech, which I think, unfortunately, is the right call. So there are a few cases that come to mind, and the court has been very, very, I would say, for the most part, with obscenity, remember I was like, what the fuck is this? The court was like all over the place. But with this, they've been consistent. So there's some flat, I forgot what case it was, but there was a case where somebody was burning a cross on a Black family's yard or whatever, but the statute that was being challenged was like, you're not allowed to do this based on, or you're not allowed to engage in activity that will, that is a reasonable person, the other lawyer in here knows, the reasonable person, it's always the reasonable person, would think would like offend somebody or whatever based on their race, religion. Anytime that is said based on religion, race, etc., the Supreme Court is like, no, because you're saying that if it's speech that wasn't, targeting someone's race or religion, etc., then it would be fine. Therefore, it is content-based discrimination. And we all know Supreme Court doesn't like content-based discrimination. So the way that these statutes are worded is very important. I mean, there's a really famous case, I think it was like in the 70s, where a Nazi group wanted to like have a protest in like a Jewish area. And there was an ordinance that said like they couldn't do that. They couldn't protest, but it was very specific. Like it was like, if it's this kind of protest against people's religion or whatever. And I think they wanted to wear uniforms with swastikas on it. And there was like something in there saying specifically that, and the Supreme Court's like, no. But in Virginia v. Black, there was a case where it prohibited, I don't know if was it burning a cross? It said in order to intimidate somebody, and that's fine because they were like, okay, yeah, you can't do it in order to intimidate somebody. It's not based on a specific, you're not. But the reason, sorry, I'm confused, because the reason that they actually did strike down that statute was actually because part of it was that And by burning a cross in general, we're going to automatically assume that it's for this reason. And that was the reason that the Supreme Court said it's not constitutional. But that one part of it, that's just like burning a cross in order to intimidate someone, they said that's fine, because that's not saying you can't burn a cross in order to intimidate somebody based on their religion or whatever. But if you're burning a cross to intimidate somebody based on their hair color, that's fine. You see what I'm saying? But if it's just to intimidate people in general, they said it's fine. But the problem with that case was that the statute also required that people just assume that the reason that they were burning a cross was for that reason. And that was why. God, I could never be a law professor. Let me see. I'm not a lawyer, but I love to read cases. I worked in corrections for a while, so I love that. I have since changed careers. Yeah, that's cool. I don't know why anybody would love to read cases if you don't have to, but you know what? That's actually pretty amazing. I guess I like to read like philosophy books, even though I don't have to. Do you feel terms of service and regulations on the internet is counterproductive to free speech? And what do you think about it with your expertise? I'm not an expert in free speech other than being like a lawyer and just having a background on what's protected speech and not protected speech. But that is, like I said, a completely different discussion than what's going to get you banned on Twitter or what's not going to get you banned on Twitter. Now, if we're going to get into that, I do think that, like, for instance, right, we had this over the weekend where, I mean, Elon came through and he's like, I'm going to fix this, whatever. And then Kanye posted, I think, was it a swastika in the Star of David? And he gets his Twitter account shut down for like 12 hours. What do we think about that? What do we think about, I think with Kyrie Irving? And this is the thing. There's one argument that I think is fair and valid, is that censoring doesn't make the idea go away. Even if it did, I don't think it would factor into my opinion, because I want my opinion to be based on the principle and what I think should be protected and what we need to engage in the marketplace of ideas. But as a side note, I don't think it does anything, right? Like, in fact, I mean, we all saw when Kyrie tweeted out or whatever about that movie, then that movie, like, everyone, and then he got in trouble for it. Now everyone's interested in the movie. I will say it is very scary, the amount of people. And so when I was deep in like law world, I wasn't as scared as I am now. To be quite honest with you, I wasn't privy to how many stupid people are in our country and are online in particular. When I read comments under like something Kanye said, or like, it bewilders me that people are this fucking stupid. And it's scary, right? Because if you allow this rhetoric, people will believe it. To my great, like, I'm shocked because, I wasn't in this circle, but now being here and just reading even my own comments, reading how people can't, like, I've talked about this before, people don't know how to even the correct usage of like, people are just very uneducated, and it just takes to go down the wrong rabbit hole. These people we talked about conspiracy theories in another stream as well. People don't know how to like, if a source is valid. People don't know about logical fallacies. People don't know this stuff. And we do run the risk of a whole bunch of people following some batshit crazy ideology that can potentially, we can't say it can't, lead to terrible, terrible consequences. But censorship doesn't seem to be the answer to that. Okay, I got some comments. Free speech protects you from the government taking actions against you. Content moderation on a private business platform does not infringe free speech because you're always free to leave that platform or start your own. I agree with this 100%. Now, I've mentioned this before too. Some people would argue that places like Twitter are basically the new public square, and and the public square has always been the place with the highest protection of free speech, because it's where people go to share their ideas. It's where the marketplace of ideas really occurs. And because it's 2022 and nobody's going to their public square downtown to talk about their ideas, people are on Twitter talking about their ideas. So there is the argument that despite it being a private company, maybe it shouldn't be. And maybe the government should come in and be like, hey, we're going to afford Twitter the same free speech protection that we would afford the public square. And then it's not up to the company to regulate the platform. I don't know how I feel about that. Am I happy with it being up to the whims of a billionaire? No. Was I happy with the way Twitter was moderating content before Elon? I told you I'd have a cough attack. No. So there's that. I should have gotten some water. Oh, there's actually water right there. 1 second. Oh. So I don't know. The content moderation thing is do you feel like these sites are allowing more ability for free speech? Also, we talked about this in the other stream. Twitter is different by nature than the public square, right? Pornography, for instance, if pornography isn't protected by the First Amendment, should pornography be banned on Twitter, but not the N-word? You know, I don't think that makes a lot of sense. So tricky area. Drizzle Drippin is correct. Yet social media has such an influence today, especially pre-Elon Twitter and Facebook. Yes. So this is kind of the argument, right? Yes, it's a private company. These are all private companies, but Facebook, Twitter, etc. is where the marketplace of ideas is in 2022. It's not as your public. So nobody's reading billboards and shit like with messages on them. People are engaging in this kind of stuff on Twitter and Facebook. And we know both of them have censored information based on whatever agenda or whatever viewpoints they believed in and they followed. I am a fan of fact checkers as long as we can, to the best of our ability, make sure they're accurate and neutral. I think fact checking is very important. And I don't think that does anything. Like some people are like, oh my God, having fact checkers or having a warning that this is misinformation is like, I'm like, no, I think that's fair because like people are not going to go check every piece of information that's online and having it. I think it should still be up. But that little warning like, hey, we've checked this. This is wrong. The vaccine doesn't have a fucking microchip in it. You know, so that people can at least maybe see that. A lot of those people don't care and they think that they're the fact checkers are part of the conspiracy and there's nothing we can really do about that. But using censorship as a means to try to halt or suppress these nut jobs on the internet, I think one is counterproductive and two can very easily run into a problem of compromising our principles on free speech and the reason that it's important in the first place in order to achieve that end, which is an important end. But you, like I said, always think of it reverse. Think of it as okay for and like, you know, Twitter and Facebook pre-Elon were, you know, I would say more on the left and they would censor that kind of rhetoric. Like that was, you know, like I was very against even kicking Donald Trump off Twitter. I was against kicking people off Twitter for using the wrong, you know, pronoun and stuff. Always think of it reverse. Think of it as, you know, what if they were a very right-wing, these were really right-wing platforms and they were censoring pro-vaccine information, etc. So maintaining our principles and being able to instantly in your head try to switch the scenario and see if you still agree with what you initially agreed with, I think is a good way to make sure you stick by those. And then also looking at the fact that censorship, I don't think, especially in the day with the internet, is useful because look at Alex Jones. He's been like, and he still has a following. Sorry, I'm late. Loving this breakdown of hate speech. Been so interested in it. Yeah, I was looking for you in the beginning. If you watch the replay, you could be a law professor. Really? You guys are too nice. I feel like I feel like I'm very bad at, I have it in my head and I want to tell you guys as if you guys already know stuff that you probably don't know because you didn't go to law school. So I'm like, oh shit, okay, let me go back a minute. Is what Kanye is saying be considered hate speech? So hate speech, if we're going to define it, because it's not a unprotected category of speech. So there's no like separate, okay, this is hate speech and this is not okay, or this is hate speech and this is okay. So I would say hate speech is just, if we're going to like define it as just spewing out hate on a particular group of people based on their religion, race, gender, etc. Yeah, I would say that I would say that it is textbook hate speech to say, you know, that to talk this way about a particular group of people, in his case, Jewish people, to put a swastika up on Twitter, I would say that is a clear indication of hate speech. Now, Elon said he suspended him for incitement to violence. I don't know about that, Elon. I don't know about that. I can't actually be intellectually honest and say that a swastika is the same thing as inciting violence. If we're going to use the Brandenburg test, right, for the incitement of violence, it's literally that you have to have the intent to incite violence. He may not. And imminent violence must be likely. Now, if Kanye West was speaking to a group of people outside of a synagogue and he put up a swastika and he said, let's take care of these Jews, and these people were angry and that is an incitement to violence. Putting up a swastika on Twitter, I don't think puts anybody imminent, and imminent is key factor when it comes to incitement of violence. Otherwise, you could fall into a slippery slope of being like, this can cause violence, because almost anything can potentially cause violence because one crazy person may take, you know. So we do, when it comes to laws, we do have to be as clear and narrow as possible to avoid it being overbroad. In order to protect free speech, we have to definitely make sure that we don't put in limitations that are overbroad. And in order to fight against this kind of speech, we also restrict speech that should be allowed. About the comments under post. Sorry, I'm behind on comments, but I'm going through them. Some are definitely trolls, like the N-word on Twitter, yet it still has negative effects even as a troll. So I think that's a different topic. So if you are just running on Twitter saying the N-word or this impersonation stuff, like I'm not trying to be, I think, well, here's the thing, right? Is it just expression? It's definitely not an idea. It's definitely not anything that's not a viewpoint. The N-word on its own is not a viewpoint. But neither are my titties necessarily. So if we're going to protect expression, right, we talked about the 3 values that free speech really tries to protect. Democracy is number 1. Marketplace of ideas number 2. Number 3, expression. I would say like porn, etc. falls under expression. The N-word also falls under expression. So I think it's hypocritical. I think it might be hypocritical of me to say, no, porn should be allowed, but the N-word shouldn't, because the only reason I would say that is because the N-word is hurtful. It's just icky. And my titties are great. You know. My titties save lives. Sorry. I didn't want to do this because I was sick, but I was like, I really miss you guys. And a lot of you guys were commenting that you wanted me back. So we're back. That's the one thing that scares me the most. The stupidity of people and the tribalism in the country right now is frightening, not to mention these other people voting into office. Yeah, that has been the craziest, because I would say I was living in a bubble prior to my career change. Prior to my career shift, I was living in a bubble where I thought people had most people had like a, you know, like a base level of intelligence, I want to say, and that they weren't. I thought that, okay, here's what I thought. I thought less people were susceptible to the craziness than there are. I thought it was maybe like a very, very small percentage of people who would listen to what Kanye's saying and think that he is really smart and he's telling the truth and he's playing like 4-dimensional chess. I thought that number of people was very small. I still don't think it's particularly large, thank God, but when you read some of these comments, it is like, this is scary, right? This is really scary. Like, how many people could actually be convinced of something this fucking nutty because they don't do research, or they don't know they don't have critical thinking skills, because they're falling down this rabbit hole, because they have all those risk factors we talked about when we did our conspiracy theory episode. They're uneducated, which in a way, that's kind of what's protecting us. Is a lot of these people are also the most powerless people in society, and that's also part of the reason they're susceptible to this and they gravitate towards it. So, but get enough powerless people in society that aren't educated, that are, we talked about this even when it comes to incels, have the 3 ends of radicalization: need, narrative, network, and really bad things can happen. But what do we do about it? Do we just say we censor you off everything? I don't think that necessarily will work with the internet in 2022. And would that be compromising our principles on free speech? I mean, you guys know my take on free speech, on definitely learning the other side. I don't even think you can fully have an opinion on something until you know the best arguments against your opinion. I see this a lot, especially with pro-choice, pro-life. I think Michael Shermer spoke about it too, which I completely agreed with. He said he has like a class, and a lot of people, especially these days in normal colleges, are very left-leaning and they're all pro-choice. And so what he says is, okay, what's the argument for being pro-life? And a lot of people don't know. And he's like, well, if you don't know, then you're not really pro-choice, because you didn't actually formulate that opinion. You're just regurgitating what everyone around you says. And so for me, it's really important to even like the fringe to understand what they're saying. Now, some people that crazy and quite frankly stupid, it's hard to really engage with their thoughts. They're not smart enough, right? Like a Kanye is not very bright. He's not intellectual. He never was. People who thought he was a genius, past just music sometimes. I don't know what was wrong with you ever. Like, I don't know what he's ever said that was smart. But, some of the other right wing, like a Shapiro, I like to hear like what he has to say on certain things, because he can show me what some arguments are on that side that I vehemently disagree with, but it helps me formulate my thoughts. I don't trust the government to moderate content either at this point. Yeah. So that's why I think this broad protection of hate speech, or speech in general, is good, because we do not want the government to come in and be like, this is hate speech, this is not hate speech, this is allowed, this is not allowed, this is blah, blah, blah. So having these very, very, very limited exceptions to free speech, like incitement to violence, that's very clear, has a clear test. Brandenburg is very few things would fall into that. And I think that's good. The more narrow it is, the more narrow the exception, I think the better, because that leaves less wiggle room for human beings to be making those calls. If the government should take any action with social media platforms, it would be to use the actual anti-monopoly laws. We have to limit their, yes. If we can pin this comment, let's pin this comment. Let's star it. I agree with you. The monopoly, I am like a big, like, this is like 100% like based, especially when it comes to even like Apple and their ability to pull people off the App Store. I mean, you guys know how I feel about this as a sex worker. Apple is very anti-sex work. They threatened to take Tumblr off, which is why they had to get rid of it. They get rid of their more, they were allowing explicit content, then they had to stop because of and we don't have it. Everybody uses I have an iPhone, and I hate that. So I agree with that comment 100%. And I think that would be the way to go. Do I think it's going to happen? Probably not. I agree with fact checking, because most people will spread fake info. But even Facebook fact checkers gave basically proven to be politically biased. Yeah, that's the problem. It ends up being biased. But if we can avoid it, if we can have neutral parties come in, or have a fact checker for the fact checker. I think that fact checkers, in theory, that aren't politically biased, hopefully, are good. I 100% stand by that. So yeah. Because I mean, I even like to see them. I mean, most of the time, like I'm like, okay, this is not true, but sometimes I'm like, oh, and then I see it, and because people, I mean, and we're like the fact that you guys are on here, in general means that you guys are probably like me, that we're more of like an intellectually curious crowd, except for the people that just came to ask about my titties, which you are very smart as well. But we are the type of people that we're like, we're gonna go check the sources, etc. But we can't think everybody's like us. In fact, most people are not like us. Like most people don't read. Most people aren't educated. Most people don't know how to see if the source is authentic or not. They see a meme that their grandpa shared on Facebook that has a random statistic on it, like 80% of people that took the vaccine are now having seizures, and they're like, you know. So I want a fact checker on that says, this is not true. And I think something that's very telling is always people that, if you're against fact checkers, probably a nut job. Sorry, what topic would you get on the LSAT? I'm taking it in January. 167? I don't know exactly. Censorship in China is China's path, and look where it's getting that with these lockdowns. Yeah, I don't agree with how China does anything, so you won't get any pushback on me. There are already people putting up Kanye was right signs and doing Nazi salutes. So that's one thing. Those people, I mean, Kanye did give them the Kanye was right slogan, but they were there for a while. But Kanye is really, and Kanye is making that fucking, that 15, 16-year-old, I'm being too generous. The fucking grown ass adults sitting in their room buying Yeezys, blah, 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 that are sitting there like, he's right. And I think with anti-Semitism in particular, it's really hard for certain people to understand it, because especially if you're younger, like my age even, we didn't like we are starting to become further and further removed from the Holocaust. And if you're not educated, if you don't know that these people have been persecuted for thousands of years, pretty much this probably, I don't want to like, pit people and be like, this was the most persecuted group, but they are definitely amongst the most persecuted groups in history. And people just see now, and they grew up, and all they grew up with was Kanye, and they don't know anything about this, and they're like, oh my God, Kanye's right, because Jewish people did achieve a lot of success. I mean, there's a lot of Jewish lawyers. I am a lawyer, and but that doesn't, so I think for a lot of people, when they see like, okay, discrimination against Black people, it's usually negative, right? It's okay, they're criminals, they're this and that. And then people are a little bit confused as to how saying that Jewish people are very successful and they're the Jewish media and the Jewish people in power are very, they don't see that as offensive. I'm seeing a lot of this. I'm seeing that they don't understand. They're like, oh, like, we can't say that Jewish people run the media, and they don't understand how that's anti-Semitic. Now, Kanye, that's how it started, but now I think we're just getting Nazi salutes from Kanye now. So I think that ship has sailed. But in the beginning, I was shocked to see the lack of education that a lot of people had on anti-Semitism and how people didn't understand it. And people were like, oh, so like we can't say this about the Jews? Like, no, you can't. I mean, you can, but here they don't understand why it was wrong. So let me go back up. Okay. China also has, okay. Can you make the case that the swastika represents intent to do harm? I don't agree with that, but I guess the case would be that the swastika represents harm to Jews by default. And so if you're putting up a swastika, why else would you put up a swastika unless you agree with that sentiment? And it's basically a call to violence. It's like the sign for violence against Jews. I think that would be the argument. I don't agree with it. Although it's absolutely egregious and you're a fucking sick, stupid human being if you, I mean, Kanye is literally a sick, stupid human being. But that would be the case for it being an incitement to violence. It's putting up the sign. It's like if there is a sign that stands for violence against the Jews, it would be a swastika. Would you want your kid to put up a swastika on Twitter? What? No. China, Australia, and North Korea are great examples of censorship. Australia likes to fly under the radar like Canada. I don't agree with like criminalizing Holocaust denial and stuff. I would actually go as far as to defend Holocaust deniers, and I hate that. But that is me being somebody that is trying to be intellectually consistent with my views, and that involves that. Now, what fucking pisses me off and scares me, and something that I wasn't aware of, is how many people, because I used to think, okay, people are going to deny the Holocaust. Okay, they're fucking nut jobs. Let them stand in the corner and do that. Like, who the fuck, like, you know, it's the fucking, like, it's like saying the fucking earth. And you know what? There are a lot of the earth, the flat earth stuff is, you know, it's resurging too. But, but now I'm like, oh shit, like with this Kanye stuff, I'm like, there are people who are actually this fucking crazy. But I don't want that to be a reason that I'm like, okay, I want to change my views on my views on free speech. Okay. 13 million dead, 6 million Jews, I believe. Yes. That is, I believe, the numbers that we have. Stop bragging about yourself. It's such a turnoff. I don't think Roger Sterling is reading the room. Here, the platforms are private companies. While I agree these platforms need to be much more transparent on what their terms of service is and how they make their decisions. Ultimately, I believe the government should not be stepping in unless using anti-monopoly laws to break up platforms. Checking out. I agree with this. I agree. But at the same time, these terms of service. So yeah, the kind of the. I heard that Elon was, I mean, he had some meeting because like Europe was like, we will ban you if you don't have clear terms of service. So we know what kind of content is allowed and what kind of content isn't allowed. And I think a lot of platforms need to be more transparent with this. Elon, Mr. I came in to clean this up, is doing fucking Twitter polls on who should be reinstated, who shouldn't be reinstated. I think he said he was going to just randomly reinstate like 20,000, like that's bullshit. You know, I don't think Mr. Elon is, I don't think he's showing that he's not as smart as he was kind of like, it's some of these people, it's like if you just stay far away, we're like, oh, he's probably a smart guy, whatever, and then they come to the forefront and we're like, oh, you were just good at one thing, like that. And so yeah, I think that transparency needs to be clear. And yeah, some things are going to require a human being to review it and make a call, but Twitter polls and just granting amnesty to fucking random Twitter accounts are not the way to go. Kanye isn't playing chess. He's acting like a child who wants attention. I mean, Kanye's situation is he's stupid. Being stupid and being, I mean, I'm not saying this just to be mean, being mentally ill. I mean, it's clinically accurate for him. And being Kanye West, and he was never a man known for his humility. This is just the worst combination imaginable, is all wrapped into one. Now, I don't care about Kanye. I'm going to be honest. I don't give a fuck about Kanye. I would go as far as to say that I I don't wish bad for him, but even like people are like, I'm so worried about his, I mean, there's so many other people in the world that need help that are in way worse positions than Kanye that I believe are far more deserving, that aren't getting the things that they need in life. So the fact that Kanye isn't taking his, I don't care. But my problem is that he is influencing a lot of really stupid people. And when a lot of stupid people get together, people can get hurt. But I don't think censorship is the answer to that. Not sure what is the answer to that other than, education, but with the internet, I mean, you see things, people just type a comment and they'll just say a fact that isn't true. Like they'll be like, oh, actually 2 million Jews were killed. That's it. And then a bunch of people will like the comment. I'm like, where did you get this? And does everyone else just like, do you guys just think if you read something that you like, it's true? There's a lot of people who think that. I don't know what the answer to that is, but the censorship we've seen has not worked. It's just made people crazier. Fact checkers, if we can make sure they're not, because the second fact checkers show that they're biased, that puts their legitimacy into question. It's just a mess. Social media gives every overconfident idiot a megaphone. Yes. And other idiots follow the biggest idiot with the megaphone, which right now is Kanye. Oh. I like what Breaking Points is trying. I enjoy Breaking Points. Yeah. On YouTube, that's a good. I enjoy their commentary, and they do have people across the political aisle on it, which is also really interesting to me. I prefer that kind of platform or that kind of setup. I do consume by force like right-wing commentary, left-wing commentary that I'm more aligned with, but I make sure to mix it. And Breaking Points, I think, is a good one. And back to Kanye, he was foolishly over-commenting these ideas. Yeah, but also I'm not letting people off. Like, this is my thing with Kanye, because I grew up with a lot of people trying to say he was smart, and I always was like, where? And now they're like, oh yeah, he went crazy after his mom died. Like, that's what. I'm like, no. I'm not letting you off the hook. No. I mean, yes, his mental illness is definitely exacerbated at the moment. He's having an episode, but he was never smart. This man needs to know y'all's SAT score. Yeah. It's okay. If you need motivation for your test, you should just go study for your test. Fact checking is only as good as the people auditing the information. I don't agree with that. If there is actually a standard, like people who say that there's no such thing as truth now, I hate these kind of people. People who are like, well, everybody is just saying what they believe based on the fact there's no such thing. Like people who are like, statistics don't matter and scientific studies don't matter. Science doesn't matter because science is just tweaked to people's. No, there is still a thing as objective truth. There are still such a thing as facts. There's still such a thing as science and the scientific method and things being testable and duplicated and peer-reviewed. These things are still objective measures for information. And so when someone says fact-checking is only as good, no. And has there been times where this has been abused and people have are people, human beings, flawed? Do human beings have biases? Yes. And this is all stuff that I think we should be working very, very hard to take into account with the system we use to fact check. But there is still such a thing as facts. And there is still a means of checking information and seeing if it's accurate or not. And if it's accurate, it's accurate. And if it's not accurate, it's not accurate. It's about the method the method we use to fact check. But fact checking is still a real thing. Facts are still a real thing. All the information in the world is not now just all neutral, free for all, because of certain people or certain platforms having a political agenda. That does not mean that there are no such things as facts now. That does not mean that 2 + 2 may equal 4, may equal 8, or may equal 7. If someone puts 2 + 2 equals 7 and someone puts this is misinformation and you're like, fact checking is only good as the people. No. 2 + 2 equals 4. Doesn't matter who's checking it. It doesn't matter if the person who said that is Republican or Democrat or whatever. So I hate this kind of rhetoric, and this is the kind of rhetoric I was talking about, where people now hate, like and I see this a lot with, unfortunately, like I'm going to be honest, a lot of conservatives, and not like, it's like the stupider conservatives, like the Candace Owens that are like, oh, they like make fun of science, make fun of studies, or they just, now they have a disdain for education. They're like, oh, if you went to an Ivy League school, you're probably stupid. Or no, you're stupid. I'm not saying there's no issues with, what's going on in universities, or speech being restricted, or not allowing different viewpoints in. But that doesn't now mean that science doesn't exist. And this doesn't now mean that facts don't exist. And this doesn't now mean that your crazy fucking idiot, nut job, lunatic conspiracy theories are the same as actual facts. Sorry, that was my little, I got a little feisty there. Transparency with fact checking is key as long as all the information is cited. Yes, exactly. If you have I think that these little signs, hey, this is misinformation, I should be able to click it. I should be able to go to your sources directly. And I think this should be more of an emphasis in this in all, like K through 12, and then obviously continuing in higher education, of being able to fact, like to be able to know which sources are accurate and which sources aren't accurate. I think that needs to be done 100%. If you cite your sources, if I can go look at your sources, if you cite a study, I can go read the study, I can look at the method, I can look at where it was published, I can, make that call for myself. But people who are like, oh, well, I don't trust fact checkers, so I'm just going to believe it's fake. Why? Because you don't know how to authenticate things, because you didn't learn that. Then you should learn that. And if you refuse to learn that, then don't spew out bullshit on the internet. My opinion. Yeah, who was that dumbass who came in here talking about titties? I'm never going to blame anyone for talking about my titties. All right, I'm behind on comments. Feel like people think they owe Kanye their life because his music helped them a lot. I think people are just stupid, and people have a propensity to hate and to blame other groups of people. I mean, this is why all of this shit exists. This is why people, think the fucking replacement theory exists. People want to blame external factors for their problems. So when Kanye goes in and he tells a bunch of disenfranchised people, look, even me, the Jews are out to get me. Imagine what they're doing to you guys. This is why you're living like the way you're living. It's because of the Jew. People want to believe that. We have almost an evolutionary predisposition to like that information better than to say, well, no, I'm here because of me, not because of this. We talked about this when it came to conspiracy theories too. People want to believe there's order in the chaos, and it's easier for people to believe there's like the Illuminati or the fucking Jewish cabal or whatever. There's like a group of bad actors, like evil, like in their evil, they're like that are responsible for your problems. It's more simple, and it's much easier for people to digest than it's because of me. Are you a flat earther? Of course I'm a flat earther. Would you defend Nicholas Funt? I would defend his ability to speak, unfortunately, and it hurts my soul. It hurts. I feel like I'm being stabbed a million times, but when I actually think about my principles and what I believe and what kind of free speech protections I want, he should be, what, when you're talking about like, should he be allowed to say this stuff? Yeah. Should he be put in jail for this? Okay, no. And then the next step goes to, should platforms facilitate this? That becomes a little bit of a trickier question. Now, when it comes to Alec Jones and actual defamation, 100% no. I'm completely for. I gotta plug this in. Oh shit, it's kind of. Oh, it's gonna work. It's like wrapped in. Give me a second, guys. 1 second. There we go. So I think Nicholas Fuentes is a piece of shit, but I don't think he should be. I think he should be allowed to be a piece of shit, unfortunately. Unless you can point to a specific. No, I don't want to update right now. Remind me tomorrow. Unless you can point to like a specific thing he said that maybe falls under some other kind of maybe exception. I stand to defend Elon. He's replying to a lot of complaints and questions, which transfers a sense of transparency. See the idea social media mobile line about the transparency is in the right direction. It's sometimes executed poorly. I mean, I don't have an issue with him when it comes to transparency. I have an issue with him because he decides who to ban and who to what is his rule? We still don't know. He just puts up fucking Twitter polls, right? And then he's like, "Oh, I decided to ban Kanye because of that." I mean, that doesn't make sense. I decided to not ban this because of it. Just none of his ideas have been good. Elon doing random replies and retweets doesn't necessarily equate to exactly. He doesn't know what he's doing. Or if he does know what he's doing, I would love for him to share with the rest of us because it looks like he doesn't know what he's doing. Yeah, he's a great bro who really seems interested in collaborating. I'm buying it as a really invention, just an observation. I really don't think he's doing much good at Twitter at a time. Yeah, he could turn it around. But I think Elon is just I'm gonna be honest. My take on my analysis of Elon is that he wasn't, the most popular kid growing up, and he's kind of just like, and then he got all this success, and he has these little stands, these Elon simps, right? And they were like, pray, like, Elon, come save us. And he's like, okay, I'm gonna come save you. And he's like trying to be the cool kid, and he like brought in the sink, and he's like, yeah, like I'm Elon. And then he realized that, oh shit, I have all this responsibility now, and I don't really know what to do with it. And I kind of just did this to like own the libs pretty much. And now he's so far, he's just being exposed as an idiot because this whole fucking blue check thing, I don't think I could come up with a stupider idea than that. And then everyone started impersonating him, and he bans people who it's like, it's funny. A platform should have a clear TOS that is enforced evenly throughout. The CEO of a company shouldn't be the sole arbiter. Yes, agreed. I think he's made some allusions to reverting to TOS in line with the prior version of Twitter's. Who knows? He says something new every day. I found amusing that the whole Biden laptop was never really smoking gun, but I agree. Transparency should be required. Also, I agree with you on the transparency. Guys, sorry, I'm like so clogged up. But I think providing a sense of it is good first step as they formalize a better process. They need to win hearts right now so they don't go in. Yeah, I don't know what's gonna happen with Twitter. My question I guess I would pose to you guys is, if you were in charge of content moderation, what would you do? I'm not gonna lie, the first stream I've watched of yours and I'm invested, not for the reason that I get that a lot. He banned Kanye with a link to Twitter guidelines against inciting violence. Yeah, and I think that's shaky. Some people think he did it like to protect. He's like, okay, Kanye, let me just, maybe in 12 hours you'll, not be as manic. But is a swastika inciting violence? A swastika on its own would not be inciting violence according to our actual free speech laws. So Elon is Elon's free speech restrictions are not as broad as our country's, which I think is fine. I think if I was running a platform, I wouldn't have it be the same as, I wouldn't have it be as broad as our actual laws. But I don't know about swastikas inciting. I don't think he should have been suspended, but it's like for me, it's like I'm happy. It's like I'm glad I don't have to see Trump's tweets, even though I don't think he should have been banned. And the same thing with Kanye. It's like, oh God, thank God he's gone. He can't tweet anymore. But if I think about it principle wise, he should be allowed to tweet, and the Kanye Sims should be allowed to be really happy about that. I'm caught up on comments. So yeah, guys, it's been like an hour already. I usually do an hour and a half. But that's kind of like the topic of today. I feel like it's a hot topic right now. Okay, so I'm going to stop doing the mouse clicking because I hear it can be very irritating. I don't know, maybe if I do this, I click once and I do this. Is that better? He's ideologically driven, which derails slower than somebody purely profit driven. Agreed. I turned off my ceiling fan before I did this, and now I regret it because it's so hot. All right, guys, anything else? This was kind of the discussion I kind of wanted to have. My views on it. When it comes to hate speech in general being protected by the First Amendment, I think it should be, unfortunately. When it comes to social media platforms, like if I was running Twitter, one, I would definitely allow my titties. I think I would definitely have a broader, a lot more would be allowed than especially old Twitter was allowing. I wouldn't allow anything actually. So doxing, revenge porn, defamation, libel, slander, impersonation, all of these things would be not allowed. But when it comes to even slurs, I would allow it. I don't know if that's... But then again, I don't have any experience running a business. I'm just looking at it from purely principle. I was having to run a business, rely on advertisers, etc., which I know Elon is moving away from, which I don't like I don't like platforms having to be at the whim of advertisers. I mean, we've seen what that's kind of done with YouTube. I don't like that at all. YouTube used to be far more free, and now it's like everything needs to be bleeped out. Nobody can cuss, etc. Like you can basically just sell lipstick on YouTube, or you have to cut out a bunch of what you say, and I don't like that, and that's because of advertisers. So I don't like the idea of us having to adhere to, cookie cutter advertiser guidelines. But I'm unlike Elon. I'm not going to come on here and presume that I have the answer and I'm smarter and I know everything, because I don't know what it takes to run a company. But when we're looking at just what should be allowed in an ideal world, I think it should. Have your calcium cannons ever been subject to hate speech? Yeah. You guys, haven't you seen some of the hate speech I've gotten on some of these these streams? My poor calcium cannons. This man just said calcium cannons less than me. I had never heard that before until I started doing what I do online, and now I see it every day. Glad to have you back. Great stream. Thank you. I'm glad to be back. Sorry, I'm a little sick, congested. The clicking, I'm glad Hazard Stint told me about it because he mentioned it before and I just forgot. And I was like, click, 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 click. So next time I'll be sure to just use much quieter. All right. Next week won't be one. The week after I'll be back and hopefully we can continue this. Thank you. I feel mostly better. You guys, I don't party really. I don't drink really. And I drank like 5 nights in Mexico. And it was like these two just like completely, they broke. And then I just like peeled them off. And then I was like, well, I don't want the rest to be. So I just like, it was like a whole thing. And then everybody got sick. I actually got like some people are on their deathbed. I'm not on my deathbed, luckily. Had to sub on here. Well, and it was such an interesting. Thank you. I really appreciate your guys' feedback. And I really, really loved all your comments telling me how much you missed this. Like I said, I got comments on every Reddit, Twitter, Instagram, OnlyFans, Snap. People are like, what happened to the streams? What happened to the streams? Like, I was like, oh, I didn't know that there were people that were like loyal watchers of this. And most people watch the replay, which makes sense. It's hard to catch it live. But I do really appreciate those of you that take the time to make it live because the discussion obviously happens live. And I couldn't have a discussion with myself if people weren't here. So we all know Hazard Stint. Big shout out to him. He's usually here giving some good commentary. Drizzle Drippin', I've seen you before too. Anyone who even we didn't have any of the people mad at me for sex work on this one, but I love you guys too. Maybe next time. But all right, I am going to log off and I will see you in 2 weeks.